What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're gonna go through a tier list here, and we have HVK that's gonna help us. He is a top 100 player in the tournament scene of Pokemon Pocket in Limitless. How's it going, my friend?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing? My name is HVK. I am basically just a competitive player. I help hosting a lot of tournaments lately as well, so you might have seen my name on Discord and stuff. And I also do some deck guides on Tactor, so you want to check it out. I put like a lot of decks that I personally use, or just decks that like top tournaments or win them at all. And I tell people how to play them, what to look out for, and a little bit of advices overall.
Exactly. If you want to be updated on the meta, he is the perfect guy to keep you, on track. And we'll have the link in the description. Go check him out. And, I just want to say, after hosting a bunch of tournaments with HVK, Nuno, and SoFlo, we have so much data here that, we could definitely compile a pretty accurate tier list. And, HVK is here to assist us on getting the best tier list because, rank is around the corner. And we definitely have enough data to see what, people are going to start playing. Are you ready to get this started, HV?
Yeah, I'm ready, especially like with ranked coming around the corner. Of course, this is like tournament-based meta, so like it's a little bit different on ranked, but it should give an overall idea how and what you should play to like reach that top one that everyone wants to take.
Exactly. So let's get started with the first deck that we see here. We have Darktina. So, the highest, the craziest run of Pokemon Pocket, dominating pack after pack, format after format. It's kind of crazy that the mighty has finally fallen. The deck overall just cannot compete in this game state that we're in right now. Once you have, Greninja popping off, you have, Hydregon, and then you have, many decks that just outspeed it. And, just the days of just charging up for 3 turns and then charging up your Darkarais, it's just like over because like, gameplay has evolved and the game naturally progresses and it just gets faster.
So yeah, Darktina, like I've never thought I would see the day where it isn't meta anymore, and I think it's quite fitting that for the new big rotation, the B1 rotation, it actually isn't viable anymore. And yeah, just with Hydreigon one-shots, Giratina, the Megas are too tanky to actually maneuver around. Everything is so fast, basically, so it just can't keep up. And at this point, it's not like Darkrai and Giratina itself are not viable, but they just are not viable as one archetype together.
Exactly, and this is why we're going to put it in D tier. Let it go, bro. Let it go.
Yeah, they died for good. So the next deck on the list is Greninja-Oricorio, and more precisely with Zeraora as well. They've been played in a package as a mono lightning deck, contrary to like how it was run before, where they used dual energies with water and lightning. And overall, the deck is actually pretty good. Because you have one prizes, we have Greninja as the sniping like to get higher thresholds. You have Oricorio just walls every mega in the game, and you can maneuver quite quickly around your game plan. And especially since Zeraora hits for 50, you can do it on your 3rd turn. A lot of those 50 HP basics and are being run with Ligia and stuff are just like basically free points for Zeraora.
Right, and basically what I want to say too on that note is this deck right here is just pure anti-meta, and the fact that it counters the meta really well and it has consistency, it has a shield, and you could just play the best supporting trainers and all that. It's just overall a solid, consistent deck. And I'd say it's built to beat Suicune Greninja right now, right? And we're seeing so much Suicune Greninja or just Greninja EX variants running around, and it's a very good meta call to counter that in the early rounds of tournaments and everything else potentially in the ladder that we're going to be introduced to on the 9th of January. I believe that's when rank starts. So that's why I think this deck is pretty strong. Where do you think this should land on the tier list?
So I think it should still be C tier, a very viable C tier. But as you said, it's an anti-meta one. So like it would either put it on like high C tier or low B tier because it's really dependent on what's being played, and like it can't be the meta warping deck basically. It's just there to counter it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and the reasoning being here because like we can't forget that Magnezone is a popular deck right now, card to be splashed in everywhere, and that is one of the best Oricorio counters. And not to mention that, like you also have Greninja in your deck, right? That usually doesn't have the water energy to utilize its attack, so it's just there as a big punching bag for like dealing 110 damage with, you know, the Magnezone that deals 90. So overall, just like because Magnezone exists, that's why I believe like it would be like more of a low B tier, because like the decks that it wants to play against, it's like super high tier, right? Because it has all the advantages. But once you get into the decks that it's not really built to fight, that's when you start to see your struggles.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
So I'm gonna move it to, I think low B tier would be. We'll put it in B tier. I'll put it in B tier, but low B tier.
Low B tier, yeah. There's like definitely decks above it, above his punching weight, basically.
All right, the next deck we're gonna go over is Stelix and Babies. So the reason I'm saying Babies, because there's many variants of this deck. You could play it with Oricorio, and some are not playing it with Oricorio, just playing it with Babies, so I could ramp up Stelix faster. So I want to categorize all the decks all in the same, because they kind of do the same thing, but let's talk about the reasons why Oricorio. Oricorio is pretty good in this deck too, because you can wall out most of the metagame right now, and build up your Stelix, Onix, get your Brock, and, you know, get all the energy you need in order to put Stelix out there and, you know, start swinging. Another advantage of this deck right now is matchup knowledge. There's not a lot of Stelix running around in, like, you know, the emblem event, a lot of, like, you know, PvP, and tournaments is where you see them thrive, because when they pop up in tournaments, not a lot of people know how to play against the deck, and once the Stelix is kind of set up, you're in a situation where you're like, how am I gonna get rid of this behemoth? It has so much HP, and, you know, you're playing cards like Heavy Helmet to make it take you know, less damage, and his ability also, you know, makes him take less damage as well. You know, sometimes decks are not prepared to handle that deck, and just overall it's a strong pick when you could like definitely get that surprise factor on your opponent as well. And then the other variant, you know, is just getting your Stelix live, because the faster you could get Stelix out onto the field in the active position ready to attack, you're pretty much in a solid situation. What do you think?
I think the deck is like pretty decent. It's in a good spot, not a meta deck like being the top tier, but also not bad at all. As you said, the version played with Ori can just outplay a lot of different decks that are just not taking Ori into account, because not many decks are playing it anymore. And further than that, people just often misplay because they don't take into account the damage reduction from Heavy Helmet, at the same time the damage reduction and also the weakness removal from Stelix's attack. At the same time, they forget that Brock ramps up, so they can get like 3 energies going with the babies Brock, and then suddenly they have a Stelix within 2 turns. Yeah, so overall, a good deck. It has an Ori counter in itself with Onix, hits for 50 and then hits for 70 with weakness on Ori itself. And overall, the deck is pretty good if it gets going.
Exactly. And, you know, that's why I personally say it would go in like B tier, because like you can't ignore its like successful tournament runs. It does have like good tournament runs here and there, but not enough to win the tournament, right? So that's why I'd say it's like one of those like 50-50 type decks. You know, if you get super lucky and get that tournament win, you know.
Exactly. It loses to its own consistency basically, because 4 energies is a lot to ask for, and you have a lot of moving pieces with Brock, the babies, Ori as well. You can break easily on it as well.
Exactly.
All right, so the next deck on the list is one of the Jolteon versions that have been running around. This is the Jolteon version with 2 Zeraoras and mostly 1 Ori.
Now, I'm
And
gonna interrupt you real quick.
yeah,
I think we could, we could put all three variants, categorize them at the same time, because I kind of feel they're in the same place. So, feel free to talk about all three.
I can talk about Algae. They're in the same place in the sense that like they're like there's like one version is better than the other, but they're all basically very close together from their power level. So that's like correct in that sense. The Zeraora Ori version just plays better into Megas because you have the Ori to wall, you have the fast aggression from Zeraora to get kills on the 50 HP basics like Swablu, but you lose a lot of your consistency because you're running other basics than Eevee, so you don't get your Jolteon EX up and running in the active spot to hit damage with its ability. While, for example, the pure Jolteon version, has like a lot of consistency starting off with an Eevee because you like have a 2/3 chance to start with the Eevee that lets you evolve immediately. Then you get started with hitting with your ability, and at the same time you also have the other Jolteon, who also allows you to get quick KOs just like Zeraora does. On low HP basics, even 60 HP base, you'll 70 if you use Eevee bags. And the Magnezone Jolteon version has better late game because you have Mag who like can just win games on its own. He has a crazy attack. Does 90 damage, ramps itself up, it makes it a coin flip if the opponent can even attack or not. And at the same time you have the Jolteon who can like just ping people if they attach energies and just get very aggressive. But here again it loses a lot of its consistency, even more than the Zeraora version, because you're running a stage 2 line.
Exactly. And just like overall in the beginning of the format, I feel like Jolteon was massively, represented, and hell, it won our tournaments, right? Like here and there,
Twice.
back to back in the beginning of the format. Slightly because access to cards, right? Some players probably didn't have access to the newer cards at the moment, and Jolteon overall just like was that consistent deck that, like this format kind of, you really need a lot of energy consumption for these megas to start attacking. Look at Venusaur, look at Charizard, and then, even Magnezone. Just look at Magnezone. You need 3 energy, so you could take advantage of Magneton being out in the field, using its ability. A lot of energy distribution in this metagame right now. So early game, it was kind of one of the best decks out there right now. But like as the metagame has solidified and started seeing more, results here and there, I feel like it's like one of those situations where the deck kind of loses to its like own consistency. Because if you don't see Stampede Eevee, right, because that's like, you want to have that Jolteon out in the active as soon as possible so you can start hitting the whole field for 20. So like the thing is, it's the consistency that kills, because when you don't have the access to that Jolteon, you're just in trouble, right? So I think in this scenario, I'd say placing it somewhere at C tier. High D tier would be like the best bet for these 3 decks. What are your thoughts?
I would say in the middle of C tier.
Yeah.
I think it's a good spot. It's decent, but it's by far not one of the decks that get far into top cut.
Right. So that reasoning, we're gonna place it in C tier. Alright, so let's talk about one of my favorite decks. We're gonna talk about Mega Charizard Y. I'm going to stand by Charizard until I die. Anyways, it's kind of disgusting how Charmeleon can like just ramp up energy here left and right into Entei or even to itself, and Entei just allows you to grab these crazy hands that you could have your double flame patch, a little bit consistent, and copycat is another thing that this deck utilizes, where like some decks like to keep high hand counts, but as the meta progresses, like the deck definitely had a respectable run here and there. It's really strong when it hits, but it does have its downfalls when it gets like when it has to deal 50 damage to itself, and you have to knock out 3 different Pokemon. That can make this deck super challenging to play against like normal decks that don't run any EX. And anything that could like, Cyrus Greninja, it has a very disadvantage play style against that as well. Overall, it's still a solid pick. It performs pretty well too. What's your thoughts?
I will say, first of all, I really like the deck itself, actually. I didn't think I would like it as much as I do, but I ended up really enjoying playing it. And I will say the deck is actually really good. It's just actually a hard deck to pilot. It's not easy to pilot. It has so many good pieces. Entei grabbing your cards, Charmeleon being able to power up Entei in such a way is insanely strong. You win so many games because you power up Entei in like turn 3, you start off, you get Charmeleon up, you just knock out a basic in the active, and suddenly you're just winning with Entei itself. And it's just hard to pilot because you have to take account into your like energy placements, you need to take account like the recoil damage, you really need to plan out how you're gonna win the game, and like a very, very little inconvenience can just destroy your whole game plan. But overall, the deck is crazy, crazy strong. It utilizes May, the best of all the decks that have ever been released thus far, because you can grab either Charmeleon, either the B1 regular Charizard, who does 150, or like your Mega Charizard. Well, May like basically gets you all the pieces that you want, and you have a big hand because of Entei, who actually is a decent attacker in this deck, because you can ramp him up so fast, and you still have the energies with Flame Patch to get on your Charizard later on.
Exactly, and I'm kind of glad that you brought that up, because I was gonna bring it up if you didn't. A lot of players do say, just because they see Charizard, they think it's just brain dead, rare candy, stack, use stoke energy. They kind of compare it to that, but the same reasonings you described, it does make it like one of those decks where you have to, place your energy really well. And, piloting isn't really as brain dead as people, say it is, right? So, being fair here, right? I still say it's more like of a high C tier, maybe low B tier. Where do you think the final placement for this should be?
I would agree with it. A high C tier or low B tier. Would put it in B tier maybe for now, since Venusaur have been a little bit more popular, and you just have the type advantage with Entei especially, who can two-shot it.
Exactly.
If he gets ramped up.
B tier, mid is where it's gonna go.
So the next deck we're gonna cover is a very, very new one. I just saw it today on tournaments, and I played it as well a little bit. It's the Leafeon Venusaur deck, and overall the deck has a lot of advantages over other Venusaur variants, because while other variants really just lose the game if they don't get Ivysaur quickly up on the active to ramp it up, this one actually has a plan B, let's say it this way, where you have a Leafeon up who can ramp your Ivysaur on the bench into a Venusaur, and so you don't necessarily always need to have your Ivysaur in turn 3 to then basically have your powers to like carry the game. And overall, other than that, it's basically the same as other Venusaur variants though. You just utilize the big HP pool of Venusaur, the effect of his attack being able to poison and at the same time to like put people to sleep. If you basically get the tails on the sleep turn, you just KO everything, because it does 260 in 2 turns. And overall, a very hard deck to play against if it gets up running. And I feel like this new version, it's just like tries to combat the disadvantages that other Venusaur versions have, where you just lose the game if you don't high roll basically.
Exactly. Just like you mentioned, the Leafeon is a brand new variant that is being successful. I will say it's seeing a lot more consistency versus the other ones, because I'm just going to keep it a stack. When it comes to Venusaur, just straight up Venusaur, or the Lilligant, or the Oricorio version, all three of those decks are really just like super dependent on RNG. Like, the deck is kind of nasty once you have all the pieces together, but it's not consistent. That is a problem. And the major problem is Ivysaur, right? You could get the Ivysaur to, ramp up your energy, but the problem is having only like, what, 90 HP? And
that's 100 HP, but
it's not going to survive anything. It's not going to survive anything. And the problem is you're probably going to only have, that Ivysaur out in the active, while your opponents could be ramping up Enteis, or your opponent could, just come out with something strong and knock it out really easily. I see that being a huge problem that this deck has. Sounded like you want to say something?
So like the Ivysaur just has 100 HP, so like it doesn't survive HP. A lot of things.
It's just like I'm sorry, the reason I was thinking like 90 HP, because like, let's just say if you get the first turn and you have like a Chingling or something, you just chip it, like, because Chingling is pretty common in this format, and then you just chip the Bulbasaur too. So like, it's usually like already down in HP, the Ivysaur. So it's too much of a disadvantaged position to be in. Yeah, I know it's depending if your opponent goes second, but still, it's just like, you don't want to have like a Venusaur that's like half health, right? You're gonna be dependent on using, you know, like Lilies, Ericas. You have to draw them, right? And then you're gonna have to depend on RNG again to make sure your opponent stays asleep, so you could get knockouts and stuff like that. Just like Lilligant helps with the HP earlier in the format, but it quickly was dropped because it wasn't really good. Oricorio was, you know, a good thought for stalling, which actually worked, right? Your opponents have to waste resources in order to get rid of the Oricorio, so by then you should have a Venusaur, you know, ready to go. But it's still one of those, like, you know, what if scenarios. Can I get my Pichu out without it getting destroyed? I need to get the energy placement on the what do you call it, on the Ori, so we could attack. And, you know, it's just like, I have to have all the right cards at the right time. And, you know, for that reasoning, I could talk about like the, you know, straight the other three variants that are not Leafeon, and I'd say they're just in low tier because it's strictly RNG decks. What do you think?
I think it's good to put them on C tier and low tier. Probably a little bit on the higher end because they're good when they get going, but as you said, they're quite inconsistent. And for now, put Leafeon as well there because it's too new to judge. Judging from what I've seen and how I played with it, it seems better. But let's see if it's better to be like in B tier. For now, I would put them all together there.
Correct. So right now, we're gonna talk about Hydreigon and Mega Absol. Just overall strong combination from Mega Rising, and I'm just gonna be frank with y'all. This deck right here, overall, still strong in the metagame, and, you know, there's not really that much to say about it. Let's just be real. If you set up Hydreigon, you know, in the earlier game, like, it's the best deck of, like, the game. It cannot, like, what deck could compete with second turn, you know, Hydreigon, right? That's like swinging for 130 is kind of crazy, and, you know, it has an ability to just ramp energy itself. Yeah, you take, you know, the damage, but, you know, you have Indeedee to like offset that damage and, you know, just make it live longer. And just overall, you know, you have a backup attacker of Absol, Mega Absol, you know, ripping cards from your opponent's hand. You know, mostly like Cyrus fishing, because that's the card that could end up, you know, destroying you. You have regular Absol that could snipe Pokemon from the back row, which people like, you know, when they're forced to attack, or, you know, attack with their Mega Pokemon first. You know, you have ways of, you know, just finishing the game off with Absol as well. So overall, has great consistency. You could fit Chingling, the best card arguably in the game, because you could shut down item cards, and it's just like a free attacker, free retreat. And yeah, that's what I have to say about it. What do you got to say?
I will say the deck is basically the best deck if you open up a Hydreigon, and like, contrary to other Hyrule decks who are the best if they get going, this deck has so much going for it, even if you don't get Hydreigon. As you said, you have Chinglings who can just shut down the game, slow it down, up until the point where you just get your attack on. You have Mega Absol, who's just by far the best finisher in the game, because you basically use him in the late game where people have a big stacked hand, and you can just rip off their Cyrus or their Wincon, like every time, basically. And you can run it with so many other different Pokemons. I've seen it being run with Furfrou because it like counters Chinglings. I've seen it run with Rocky Helmets in that case, because having your Hydreigon hit for 130 and then having to take 20 back if you hit it is just so much damage. Putting it on a Chingling just makes it so not... you don't want to hit it, basically, if you put a Rocky Helmet on a Chingling. I've seen versions running more healing with the Indeedee, with the Capes, having a 170 Hydreigon who heals itself for 20. Just makes it so hard to revenge kill. It will basically always swing for 2 times, and at this point, if you need to kill 2 Hydreigons who can both swing twice, you lost the game at that point. And Absol is just such a good card, the regular one. You can set up Cyrus plays, you can soften up opponents like the Magneton to get one shot by Hydreigon, or you can just basically hit their Mega up until the point where he can never get it out.
Exactly. And just overall, like, this deck is good, consistent, and, you know, I just say I would give it a high tier. Like, overall, it's just nasty.
I agree. I would put it's one of the best decks. It's just not as good as Suicune, that's all about it, but it's basically otherwise the best deck.
Spoiler alert. But anyways.
So next deck we're talking about is Whimsicott-Aridos. This deck was pretty hot at the beginning. People were really looking forward to play it because of the synergy from Whimsicott hitting for 40 plus 30 per retreat that you need, that your active has. And then Aridos increasing the opponent's retreat by 1. Just makes a very nice synergy. The quick row extract also makes it very consistent because you're only running stage 1s. So the quick row extract is basically a tutor to get cards out of the deck. And yeah, it had solid run at the beginning of the meta, and it slowly just started to fall off, sadly. People were trying it out with just pure Aridos Whimsicott. They tried it out with Kartana and just the 1/1 Cottony Whimsicott line. And also some people tried it with Pheromosa and the 1/1 Cottony Whimsicott line. And it did well. It got some quite high placings, but I don't know if like people just stopped playing it or if the deck just fell off overall. It's just not being seen as much at this point.
Yeah, in the beginning of the format, it was very popular because, like, let's just be real. Whimsicott, people really were excited to finally see this card being played because you could actually use Aridos to combo off with Whimsicott's attack ability, and just it fell off because the reason being is like, yeah, you could get the giant cape on it and get that 170, but at the same time, there are other decks that move a lot faster than this and just could overpower it, and it doesn't have a solid Ori counter. This is why you have to play cards like Kartana, right? Because you can't depend on Aridos, you know, knocking out 2 Oricorios, let alone like 1, right? Because like 1 is already with 70 HP, you're only dealing what, 30 attack, right? While, you know, your Ori's, you know, usually swinging with like 50 damage, and they get paired with like usually giant capes and Rocky Helmet, which makes it easier for the Ori to knock both Ariodoses out. And if you get to that stage, it's like Whimsicott, what damage are you gonna do? Because you're losing your, you know, Pokemon that you're really dependent on to, like, you know, progress the game state in your favor. So just overall, it's still the deck just needs help.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The deck is not in the best spot anymore, as it used at the beginning. I think people were also very excited to just the way the deck plays with support Pokemons. It's like a different way than just straight up having your win con being ramped up on the bench. And so they were just excited to play it.
Exactly, and I believe that's why I think it should be in the C tier, kind of low.
Right now, yeah, probably low C tier.
Yeah, maybe D, but at the same time, you know.
I think it's usable, so I wouldn't put it in D tier.
Right. I'm not going to lie, this is one of my favorite decks, so I might be biased. We're going to talk about Furfrou and Mega Altaria. Just a simple fact, Furfrou is just one of those cards that's super good. Just like the fact that it could swing for 30 damage and get rid of opposing Chinglings, or, you know, just put free damage out there while taking -20 just makes it an overall crazy card. And once you combo it with Rocky Helmet, because this is like a guarantee, like, you know, in order to knock it out, you have to attack at least twice, right? And they're going to be taking, what, 40 damage from Rocky Helmet and 60 damage from, like, it consistently attacking. So overall, Furfrou is, like, super strong and gives you time to draw the Altaria, gives you time to set everything up, you know, in your favor. And, you know, you only take 1 point away if it gets knocked out, you know. So overall, solid card. And once you, like, I've seen a Japanese player combined this deck with Greninja, and it was like one of the nastiest thing. It won one of our tournaments, and just overall, I feel like this deck is really good. What's your opinion?
I feel like Furfrou as a standalone card already is such a good splashable card. It's a good frontline with his -20. It just basically destroys any Chinglings that's trying to do something. And from all the Altaria decks, this is the most consistent one. So it always gets this game plan going. Altaria overall is the best Mega up to this day. Still, it does so much damage for solid lineage. It's so tanky. And at the same time, it has such a good support system around it. You can use Furfrou, you can use Chingling, you can use Jirachi to snipe. You can even use Indeedee, and you can even attack with it. Indeedee has an actual really decent attack if you look at it. And Furfrou was just basically the best fit for a deck that needs a little bit time to get your win con going and back, while still being able to dish out damage, tank damage, absorb damage.
Exactly. And just like overall is why I think it should deserve a place in high tier as well. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely high tier. Below Hydreigon, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Just because Hydreigon has a higher ceiling. But it's definitely a really good deck.
Right.
So the next deck on our list is just pure Greninja, the version with 2 Greninja EXs and 1 regular one. It used to be played more on last season because Greninja EX is just overall a really crazy powerhouse of a card. It gives you free retreat, it gives you 100 damage for only 2 energies. It's 170 HP, is insanely tanky, and you have to consider it's just a regular EX. It's not a Mega. You don't lose the game if you lose the card. And Water overall has very good support. The regular Greninja is probably the best card ever printed, if I have to say it like this. And just being able to use Irida, even if you want to, for example, use Misty to just ramp up cards quicker. Water has a lot of support. For his Pokemon, Greninja is by far the best water Pokemon overall. The deck is just not being played as much anymore, so we don't have as much data to basically say how good it should be in this metagame.
Exactly. For that reasoning, just because there's not enough data, but overall it's still pretty strong, right? I'd say like, a high C tier, something around that range. Because I'm gonna say low as in basically not enough data.
Yeah, that's essentially the thing. Just not enough data to really say if it is good or not right now.
Now for this next one, I definitely want to kind of pair these next two at the same time because they're kind of different variants of each other, right? So let's talk about a Mega Lopunny with Lucario, basically also utilizing Hitmontop, attacking the back row. So Mega Lopunny is super strong in this metagame, just overall dealing that confusion damage. Even if you don't get any heads, right? It's still pretty good to force your opponent into a coin flip situation, and while you're dealing a 90 damage and then potentially 110 with the Lucario setup, and it could just go crazier if you have the second Lucario up as well. Like, this fighting deck for 2 energy is kind of insane, and it's pretty easy to get out. You have cards like Serena to search out the Mega Lopunny as well, and kind of transitioning into the Magnezone. I know it's like one of those situations where you just slap Magnezone into any deck and just, pray you have your consistency so you could have this 90 attacker. Just overall, I feel like both decks kind of performed kind of the same here because you're still dependent on having, the Pokemon, out there and, ready to attack. But just like that's pretty much the basis of the deck, just like strong damage, and it could just knock out like Mega Pokemon super easily just out of nowhere, because like you're gonna be chipping at them with Hitmontop, and then they're gonna be forced to summon their Mega EX into the active, because their Hitmontop has like 80 HP, right? So it could tank a few hits here and there. Or you could Cyrus in, the other, hurt Pokemon on the bench and just win the game that way. What's your thoughts on these two?
So I think Mega Lopunny surprised a lot of people overall by how decent it actually is. I played a lot of them, especially the Lucario version, and Just the fact that Lucario boosts up your Hitmontop on the active as well, so you hit for not only 20 but 40 on the active, and then you can ping for 20, makes it very, very strong in the early game. Might just synergize really well with it as well. You can pick up your Lucarios whenever you want to, basically. And the Magnezone version is just a thing of having two quite strong Pokemons being paired together, and they just do well together because they're that strong individually. The only thing about those two decks, especially for the Magnezone one, is the consistency. Having a coin flip deck is never good to have, in the sense that you're probably gonna miss the coin flips at some point when you really need them. And especially on the Magnezone version, you not only have the coin flips that are inconsistent, but you have a whole stage 2 line that you also need to get going in your game plan, which makes it even more inconsistent.
Right. So I'd say solid high low tier would be nice. C tier.
Yeah, basically high C tier, maybe low B tier.
Actually, I would say the Lucario version goes low B tier, and then the Magnezone like high what do you call it? Low tier, because the reason with the Magnezone is you still have to depend on the consistency of the Magnezone, getting live, while the other one, you could actually, just get May and depend on one energy Hitmontop that won't get knocked out early game really quick.
I would agree with all that. I think it's played a lot and people like playing it and have good the results with it, but it wouldn't put it any higher than low B tier for the Lucario version.
Right.
Next deck on our tier list is the Mag Ori deck. It's actually quite new one, to be honest. And contrary to other Magnezone decks, this one doesn't feel as inconsistent for some reason. Maybe it's because you're playing Lightning Energy, or because Ori is just naturally so good at stalling and slowing down the game. But you basically just pair Ori, who walls half of the metagame, basically, together with the Magnezone. People usually play a 1-1 split of them even, so you have the one that hits for 90 and does the coin flip thing, while you have the other who hits for 110 if you really need to push for a higher threshold. And this deck has been very, very popular in tournament scene. It does really well. It has only one prize Pokemon, which is hard to manage if you're playing an EX or a Mega deck. And just the fact that those cards are all so strong individually, and at the same time synergize so well together, makes it a really powerhouse of a deck. You have Clement to search cards, you have Ligia to search your Magnemite. The only thing you're missing is a searcher for Magnezone, but that usually isn't an issue if you just play Copycat.
Exactly, and I feel like, just having the Ori access to like easy lightning energy too, where you don't have to really just keep charging the Magnezone. It's really, really strong. Yeah, there's a picture of the old school Magnezone, but the new Magnezone, even if you just play 2 of the new Magnezones or 1 of the old Magnezone and the new Magnezone, just overall strong pick. And I feel like it's just a contender for like high tier, because like, let's just be real, like all these tournaments that we've had, it's always been in the top 8 consistently, like at least like minimum like 2, right? And that's pretty good, considering how how many like Suicune Greninja decks are entering, as well with Hydregon and Altarias. So like it has space to compete in the metagame.
Yeah, I agree with the placing of the deck. High tier is definitely the spot it should be in. A lot of people play it, a lot of people do well with it. It has an overall good win rate as well. It's just a very solid deck, and it's quite consistent even with a stage 2 deck, because the Ori just slows down the game so much. It gives you time to get all your moving pieces.
Exactly. So the next deck I want to talk about is the old school Mega Absol with Oricorio, and it has Darkarai. I'm just gonna be real with you, like this deck is not meta anymore. Like it's kind of slow. You really don't want to depend on your Darkarai being your main attacker. The deck isn't just it's not that great. There's better versions of running Mega Absol with Ori, and I mean not Ori, but other Pokemon. So just overall, this deck is not meta anymore. It's just too slow. What do you think?
I agree with it. Sadly, the deck just isn't what it used to be once. I used the deck a lot. It was one of my favorite ones from last season. And at this point, it's even Mega Absol just has so many better partners at this point to use that you don't want to rely on having your Ramper to get Oricorio running and then risking to brick on Darkrai. Like, this deck has so many disadvantages for so little payoff that you just rather have a different deck utilizing Mega Absol, basically.
Exactly. So, for that reasoning, I feel like we just gotta let it go. Just like Darktina. Yeah. It's over. I know you've been itching for this one, so I'll let you have like 10 paragraphs here.
Alright, so next deck is the Suicune Greninja, the two Greninja lines. I mean the two regular Greninjas with the one EX Greninja. This deck has been once again the best, by far the best deck in the meta. It is being played, I think, 30% of representations, which is even higher than it used to in the season that it actually launched off. I don't know what you need to say about the deck. Suicune is just such a strong card. His attack scales so hard for non-EX. He draws you cards. He lets you use Greninja with energy, which just lets you ping cards while you're drawing more cards, which lets you have your Cyruses to just basically never let your opponent play the game. So many games just come down that the Suicune will have double Cyrus and they will just win. And then you just have the Greninja EX, who is like, as I said before, a crazy card in itself. Dealing 100 damage just makes it so you can't just put one Pokemon in the active to play against Suicune anymore, because that 100 damage will two-shot most things, especially with Greninjas on the bench. Like one Greninja on the bench and one EX in the active will be 120 damage. So in 2 turns, 240, there's nothing that survives that. And exactly. Yeah, I feel like at the beginning, Suicune Greninja wasn't as good, or at least it wasn't played as much because people just wanted to play new decks. It wasn't really bad, it was always good, it was always the best, and just people now have started to default back to it again.
Yeah, pretty much. It wasn't seeing that much of a representation because everybody wanted to play with the newer cards and all that, but just overall, it's a solid deck. It's the best deck right now in the game for a reason, right? So, for that reasoning, I just say it goes S tier. Like, there's not really nothing that could compete with it. While it's so consistent, right? And just overall, like, yeah, Hydreigon is good, but like, you have to start the Hydreigon, right? But like this, you could find the rare candy a lot easier, and you have your draw engine. It's just like, overall, Greninja EX, just having the ability to shift in, shift out Suicune here, use it as a shield while you build up Greninja EX. It's just overall one of the best decks out there, and I'll put it as here because I know HV is not gonna argue with the placement.
No, not at all. And we didn't even mention yet that like people stopped using Giratina with it and started using Indeedee, which just gave the deck so much more wiggle room to like play the long game as well. With Irida, Indeedee, you're healing 60 in 1 turn if you want to. It's really hard. It's just really hard to play against the deck. Exactly. One misstep and you're probably gonna lose.
Even starting like Indeedee, Froakie, you could still somehow win the game, is what I find crazy.
Exactly.
Alright, so the next deck I want to talk about is a Mega Absol Darkrai with Greninja. This deck, if you wanted to like base like consistency, something fair, does well, this is the deck that you want to look at. It's just overall strong. It capitalizes of 20 pings from Darkrai and Greninja while attacking with Mega Absol, and it's just overall a strong pick, consistent deck, and it's very well.
So the deck itself does really, really well. I'm not the biggest fan of the deck for some reason, but like I can't deny that the deck is really, really strong in the meta. You have so many pings, which lets you basically maneuver a game any way you want to. Usually people pair it with Chingling as well, so you have a really nice way to slow down the game, get your Greninjas going, get your Darkrai going, as well as getting your Absol going. And once you're in that spot where you have Absol in the active, at least one Greninja, and for example a Darkrai in the back, there's really not much to do. You're gonna get hit for 120, and you're gonna get a card ripped from your hand. It's probably gonna be a Cyrus or an Oak that would get you out of your situation, and you're gonna lose the game eventually.
Exactly, and just overall, I feel like it's like a solid A tier pick, but it's like low A tier because it's consistent. I see it in top 8s all the time. It's and went with low tournament entries, right? So like the fact that these decks could just make it up there is pretty good.
I would agree with it. It's low A tier. Not a lot of people play it because it's also not that easy to play. It's a very high skill piloting deck.
Exactly.
But it does well. So the next deck on the list is just the new Magnezone with Heliolisk. It's like basically an electric box deck, if you want to say it this way. Why people even started pairing them together is because you have the support of the Clement cards. You have Clement itself, who lets you search one or two Magnetons and one or two Heliolisks, two of together. And they lets you also search the Clement's backpack, which makes it so Heliolisk hits for 20 more. Basically double of a Giovanni. And it's an item card, so it's quite strong in the sense that he has a lot of support. But the deck overall just doesn't compete with the rest of the meta. It has decent damage, it can get going quite fast, but at the end it's just not strong enough. You discard all your energy with Heliolisk for 120 damage, and then it's basically just a point that can be grabbed, and at the same time you're also inconsistent.
Exactly. It's like one of those decks that you have to win early game. If you don't, it's not built for a long term, bulky, or to like duke it out with like something like Altaria per se, right? Sure, it can knock out a Suicune with a Giant's Cape, but that's not the only deck you're gonna be facing, right? You have to factor in everything else in the metagame, and I just think it's not like great as what it was in the beginning of the format. So I think it's like somewhere around the low tier. Would you agree?
I would agree with low tier. It just doesn't compete. Even against Suicune, if you knock out the Suicune, it's going to probably Mars you and then win the game from there.
Exactly. The next deck I want to talk about is Greninja and Altaria-Mega Altaria. So this deck right here, seen a lot of popularity in the beginning of the format. It just overall performed really well, and just the deck has been super consistent in every single tournament it has really competed in. And this Greninja is like one of those cards, like even if you're in a bad situation, you could definitely just change the tides by like pinging something in the back row and Cyrusing for game. Something as easy as that. It does better than Jirachi, and it's just, you could use Chingling because you definitely need more Pokemon for the bench in order to pop off. So that's why I think it's pretty good. So if you ask me, it's just a solid deck. What do you think?
I really like the deck. I think it's also very solid. Contrary to the Darkarai Greninja deck, for some reason this one I really enjoy playing. It has also very high skill ceiling, as all those decks have that have a support Pokemon who can't even attack, where you need to take care of how you place, how you maneuver the game. And I will say one big thing of this deck, and why it also does well, and why I'm even surprised it isn't being played more right now, is it has a really good Suicune matchup. Because you slow down their Froakies to evolve into Greninjas by using Chingling, and then at the same time, when you have your own Greninjas, your Altaria is going to hit for 150 to 170s, which is all the breakpoints you need. You will knock out the Suicune without Cape, you will knock out one with Cape, you will knock out the Greninja EX without Cape. So there's a lot of benefits. It might be because Suicune are running Frogadier now, that is harder to play, but the deck overall is really good. I would put it definitely in high tier.
Exactly, same here. This deck is strong.
So the next deck on the tier list is the Heatmor Blaziken, the old school version.
Also, you could throw Furfrou because it's kind of the same as Heatmor.
Yeah, it's very close to it. They just play 1-1 line, one Furfrou, one Heatmor. I will say the pure Heatmor Blaziken deck is, I'd say, less strong, because you really just get slowed down by Chingling, and you have to eventually get your Combusken out, or just hope that you get your Rocky Helmets out and they can hit you twice. While the Furfrou version has a very easy way out in that situation, just hitting for 30. It doesn't get knocked out by Suicune if you have only one bench Pokemon, because it will hit for 70 and not for 80. So overall, the deck isn't being played a lot, probably because it's one of the older decks as well, but I do think especially the Furfrou Heatmor version is actually way better than people give it credit.
No, exactly. Like, I mean, the deck is good, but like it fails with like consistency. Like, you know, even with the Serena, if you don't see your Torchics, you know, you're not really gonna do anything or advance the gameplay. The simple fact, you know, you got better decks that you could run. I feel like Charizard performs a lot better. Granted, it needs more energy, you know, to pop off, but at the same time, it's just like Blazikin was good last format, but not. I wouldn't say it's great in this format. Many players tried to, you know, innovate here with this deck, but I just don't think anything has worked successfully for this, and I think it's just a low tier deck at this point.
Yeah, low tier, one of the better low tier decks, but definitely low tier. Especially considering how good it was, it's unfortunate it fell off so much.
Exactly. I wouldn't say let it go because it still has potential, but it's not like overwhelming, you know? Let's go into the next deck. We're going to talk about Mega Absol and Crobat EX. I'm just going to be really honest with you guys. This is just like one of those casual decks. Let's just be real. Like, yeah, you guys like Crobat. Crobat has a nice ability, has nice HP, but let's just be real. Like, there's so many better decks at this point. Like, there's no good results with this deck. It's alright. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that I really played the deck a lot last season to test it out. And it has some merits going to it. Crobat is tanky, does a lot of damage for low energy. You can use Absol as well. You can use Ligia for the Zubats. But for tournament play, it's just not it. It's not good enough. People can play around it quite easily, and it won't perform as well. I will say, in ranked, this deck might perform somewhat better because it's really fast. You win games very fast, so you can get a lot of games in a very short time, and that might give it the edge for ranked play, but for tournament play, it's definitely a lower tier deck.
Exactly. For tournament, I do want to really place it and let it go, but like, you have to respect, it's also like rank we're talking about as well. We could put it, so I'll put it low C tier.
So the next deck coming up is the old school Altaria in DD deck, and I'll be honest, I think the deck is insanely good. Just people have so many Altaria versions that why would you play the old one?
Exactly.
It's basically that. The deck is definitely insanely good. It has always been. It has healing from DD, and DD can attack. You usually play Jirachi, you play Chingling to slow the game down. This deck, more so than the others, play Rocky Helmet or maybe Red, because you need a little bit of reach, while the others have Greninja, for example, or can soften things up way easier with Furfrou. But I would definitely put this deck on A tier. Just low A tier, but definitely on the A tier.
Exactly. I agree with everything he said. Going into the Decidueye, like, this deck right here is pretty good. We thought that the Quick Grow Extract was going to be insanely game-changing for this deck, but honestly, it has the same problem what it did the previous formats. Like, it's just like it loses to itself if it doesn't see its right partners. Quick Grow Extract, if you have like the wrong, you know, you have Dartrix into your hands, it kind of becomes like a dead card. You know, just simple things like that. It's just like, it's an alright deck, right? It gets results here and there. For sure, the same reasoning for the Crobat list reasoning. It'll be a good ranked type of a deck. But like tournament, it's okay. I've seen great performances off it. It still wins games a lot. But like, you know, I'm leaning towards somewhere around mid. What do you think, B tier?
I do agree with the B tier take. The deck is good. It always gets more support, but it always seems like the support is not as impactful as you would wish it was.
Exactly.
The deck really performs well though against if you consider that you can just ping a Mega and then just do twice Pierce the Pain to knock it out and win the game. That's a very solid game plan, but it's not consistent.
Exactly, and kind of like the same reasoning of Mega Lopunny and Lucario. You know, that's why it's kind of like in that mid-tier range. Because like when you need double heads, you know, you're not gonna always get it. When you need the rare candy, you're not always gonna get it.
Exactly. Alright, so the next deck coming up. This one is, my biased opinion, the best deck in the game. But my unbiased one is that it's one of the better decks in the game.
Yeah.
The Darkrai Magnezone Absol deck. It's just basically an updated version of the old Dark Zone deck. And this deck is just crazy, in my opinion. It plays Chingling, it can play Ligia to get Magnemite and Chingling. You ramp up your Magneton, while you can ramp up a Darkrai, or you can just ramp up your Absol on the bench, all while you're slowing down the game. And it's just so hard to play around. You basically, let's say you knock out one Chingling, then you need to go through one Magnezone, and then you need to go through one Mega Absol to win the game, all while Darkrai gives everyone 20 reach more, just pings for 20 more. The deck is just crazy good. I'll say that it's a harder deck to pilot, and you can brick because it's not the most consistent deck. But at the same time, a good player will always be able to like edge out a win out of situations with this one.
No, exactly. And for that reasoning too, it's just overall like one of those decks where you could play most of the best cards in the game currently and just have it in one deck. It's just amazing. And, you know, Seagun actually entered one of our tournaments and won with this deck. You know, the deck was piloted by one of the best players, and we saw his gameplay as well. So, like, it is one of those decks that it's hard to pilot. You do need, like, high-level, you know, TCG, like, skills, card fundamentals, you know, in order to play it well. So, like, overall, it's definitely, like, a high tier. I would say high tier because of the consistency issues, but it's overall still like really strong.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything basically. I would put it as third or fourth on the high tier. It's very close to Hydreigon, but not quite beating it.
Exactly. All right, the next deck we're gonna talk about is Darkrai and Mega Absol EX. So this is like the daycare version of it, right? It's running Tyrogue and Chingling. And just overall had like a strong tournament showing in the beginning of the format. It was pretty good, but just like one of those decks that really fell off because, like, you know, there are better variants to run with Mega Absol, Hydreigon. You know, you have the what do you call it, Magnezone. You have like so many different partners, and for the same reasoning as, you know, Mega Absol and Ori, it's just not performing as well as it once did. What do you think?
I agree with like, people just played the best cards at that moment with Mega Absol because Mega Absol itself is so good. But now there's like so many better partners to play with it that you don't need to play a suboptimal build. You just play the better partners and you can use Mega Absol.
Exactly, and for that reasoning, I'd just let it go, bro. Let it go.
I would agree.
It's not that great anymore.
Alright, the next deck coming up is Lopunny-Lucario, and this deck is quite interesting. Pretty sure this is an anti-meta deck.
Yes.
It was played in one of our tournaments where it actually performed insanely well. Funnily enough, I was the one who knocked him out of the tournament, but it just did really well. And I think it just performed good because it has a 1/1 line of Silvally. No, 2 one-lines of Silvally where you have to go through one prizes, and then in the end you have the one big Mega Lopunny who comes in and just finishes off the game. Silvally in itself is so strong that you really have to put in resources to beat it, and then at the end, if you have a Mega Lopunny with 190 HP who can hit up to 180 and makes it so you have a coin flip to even attack or not, just makes it very hard to go through.
No, exactly, and for that reasoning, I'd say Mega Lopunny EX with Silvally is really strong. It's super consistent. Let's just talk about like Silvally, old school versus Silvally. Just like the most consistent thing ever. Why do you think Zeraora, Rampardos had great success with it? You know, now we're just evolving with the times and dealing 100 damage while, you know, just summoning your Lopunnies, attacking for 90 for each heads. It's kind of crazy, and overall very consistent. And for that reasoning, I know it's a very new deck, but like it plays well into the meta right now, into all these meta decks, and I'd even just put it like at a low high tier at the moment because it's like one of those new decks that's just gonna get better with, you know, as the time goes on, and just like it's so good right now.
Yeah, I think it's a really good deck. I would put it low high tier or high mid tier, only due to like not having enough data, to be honest. But for what I've seen the deck do, it's quite crazy actually.
And finally, let's talk about Gerdos and Suicone. To be honest, it performed really well in my tournament, but the guy had to drop before when he made Top Cut. I think he was like 6-1. I mean, I'm sorry, 7-1, making it to Top Cut, which is pretty impressive. And not to mention that, the only reason it's here too, it did win a tournament. It winning a tournament, you know, speaks for itself. It's one of those decks that I really don't have that much experience playing it, but like, you know, Trash Gyarados is just strong overall. What's your opinion?
So I played a little bit against the deck. Funny enough, I played against the guy who played in our tournament, and he beat me. And also, like, I also played in the tournament where the one guy won. I will say the deck has a lot of merits to it, in the sense you can play Suicune, your Gyarados will hit for a lot of damage for one pricer, and at the same time, and that's a very underrated thing, is that your Gyarados basically gets rid of your softened up Pokemons. So like you're basically discarding them from game to deny the point to your opponent, which can be quite strong.
Exactly. Just overall, it's just pretty strong, and you know, a very respectable deck. And you know, you'll be a fool not to respect this deck when you see in the ladder and think it's an easy win, because just could come out of nowhere, win the game, and then you're in a tough spot. So what do you think it deserves?
I would put in a high mid tier. Probably the best mid tier deck that we have.
Yeah, something along the lines. But yeah, no, overall, I feel like this is the meta that we are in, and I think we accurately, you know, hit every deck for the upcoming rank/tournament seasons. I know there's more innovation coming up, and you know, overall, I think this is a solid list. And you know, feel free to comment and let us know your opinions on this, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. And
no, I just think we did a pretty good job with the tier list. This is basically what I see in Top Cut.
pretty much. And with that, we'll leave you guys. Thank you for watching. Peace.